6 spine-chilling trucker accounts revealed. Exposed cursed roads that haunt you forever. Marco, a seasoned trucker from Springfield, had always loved the freedom of the open road. But on this chilly autumn night, his heart was heavy. Bills piled high at home, and his family, his wife and 2 young kids, swayed in his thoughts like ghostly figures. As he turned onto the infamous Route 66, he remembered the stories he'd heard about this isolated stretch, known for its eerie folklore and abandoned towns. The neon lights of long-gone diners flickered in his rearview mirror, casting unsettling shadows that danced like phantoms. The vast landscape was a hollow theater, and the engine's low hum was interrupted by ghostly crackles from his CB radio. "Don't stop. The lost are watching." He dismissed the warnings as mere interference or the ramblings of lonely truckers. But doubt crept into his mind. He could feel the chill as he passed empty homes, their peeling paint telling tales of lives once vibrant, now overshadowed by despair. The shadows at the roadside felt alive, faces twisted in agony, arms outstretched as if pleading for salvation. Marco's skin crawled. Every passing mile brought an oppressive weight, and the familiar comfort of home felt distant, unreal. What if this isn't just folklore? He wondered, a knot forming in his stomach as he recalled the legends of families cursed on these roads vanishing without a trace. Marco glanced at the horizon, noting how the night thickened, the darkness breathing around him. Shadows pressed in closer, whispering secrets as old as the highway itself. Cursed families, lost souls forever searching for a way home. He tightened his grip on the wheel, heart racing. Each mile marker felt heavier than the last, sinuous whispers seeking to draw him into their grip. What if they come for me? Panic seeped in, making his breath quick and shallow. He spotted a phantom toll booth, flickering lights beckoning him. But when he drew near, it vanished into the haze. The world around him seemed to pulse with a life of its own, dark secrets beating beneath the asphalt. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the night dragged on, reality bent and twisted. Faces began to rise from the edges of the road, ghostly figures wailing, and Marco's heart raced with every heavy thud of the tires. "Marco, help us!" A voice wove through the static of the radio, filled with desperate pleading. It sounded like his wife, twisted and distorted by pain. Suddenly, the chilling realization struck him like ice. This wasn't just a drive. It was about survival against forces beyond his comprehension. Was he being drawn into the very curse he'd scoffed at? The road twisted ahead as he neared another abandoned town, darkness swallowing him whole. Could he unlock the fates of those lost souls and save his family? Or would the cursed roads claim yet another victim, leaving him forever wandering? A mere whisper in the night, the silhouettes closed in, and as the night advanced, so did the terror, the answers just out of reach. The truck's headlights cut through the thick fog, dim beams dancing off the walls of empty buildings that loomed like hungry specters. Marco felt suffocated, as if the walls themselves were closing in, whispering sinister secrets in a language just out of reach. The more he drove, the heavier the dread lay on his chest, constricting his breath in short gasps. Suddenly, without warning, a deer darted in front of his truck. He slammed the brakes, heart leaping into his throat. The truck skidded, metal grinding against asphalt. He jerked the wheel left, narrowly missing the animal. "What the hell?" he shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. Exiting the near collision, he noticed the landscape shifting. Trees began to lean unnaturally, branches twisting like gnarled fingers reaching towards him. The air thickened, seeming to vibrate with unseen tension, the quiet pressing in like a vice. "Get it together, Marco," he muttered, though his voice quivered. As his eyes flicked towards the rearview mirror, he froze. In the darkness behind him, Two glimmering eyes reflected back, standing impossibly still on the shoulder. A shiver ran down his spine. Fear crept in, numbing his senses. As quickly as they appeared, they vanished into the fog. But a pulse of static on the radio jolted him back to reality. "Marco! Help! Lost!" The voice was louder now, more urgent. Twisting the knob, he tried to change the channel, but nothing else played. It was only that broken plea, like a siren song of despair pooling in the corners of the cab. "I need you to listen to me," the voice strained. "You must stop. They want you to keep going." But where could he stop? The road stretched infinitely, an unbroken ribbon of asphalt leading into darkness. He could almost feel the sinister pull of the road, a siren's call, beckoning him to surrender. Glancing down at his fuel gauge, he felt a fresh wave of terror. Empty. Panic bubbled within him, urging him to speed up. He pressed the accelerator, and the truck roared forward. The darkness thickened, wrapping around him like an old quilt, heavy and oppressive. Each mile passed like a weight on his weary spirit. As the town of Shadows Hollow emerged from the depths of the night, the construction signs flashed ominously, declaring the road was closed ahead. Marco slammed on the brakes again, but this time it was too late. The tires lost traction and the truck pitched sideways. He fought for control, but gravity pulled him toward a gnarled tree whose branches hung like skeletal hands. A bone-shaking thud resonated as he hit the tree, throwing him against the driver's side door. The world spun, darkness creeping in around the edges of his vision. Dazed, he squinted through the windshield. The town looked alive, but it was far from welcome. Instead, he saw eerie figures coalescing on the main street, faces twisted in rage and sorrow. "Help us!" they screamed, voices layered together in a cacophony of agony. Marco's heart sank. He realized this was more than just cursed folklore. They were real, the spirits of those who never made it out. And now they wanted him to join their endless torment. Fury bled into his limbs, forcing him to throw the door open. He stumbled onto the pavement, fear choking him. Behind the figures, the shadows shifted, dark entities lurking just beyond the reach of light. Were they his imagination, or the thing that hunted these desolate roads? With a new resolve, he staggered toward the town's center, heart racing with both dread and determination. "I need to find my family," he whispered, as haunting laughter drifted in the midnight air. The echoing question hung in the silence. Would he be able to escape this nightmare, or was he already lost amongst the cursed souls? In the distance, a shadow began to shift, coalescing into a dark form that stepped toward him, slowly revealing itself with each passing moment. Marco's stomach dropped, the horror of the unknown clawing at his sanity, as he braced himself for the truth he might never be ready to face. The figure loomed closer, emerging from the murky shadows. Marco's breath hitched in his throat. It was a man, or once had been. His skin was pale and stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Eyes sunk deep into dark sockets glinted with an unsettling mix of despair and anger. Breathless whispers erupted from the ghostly throng, pleading, tormenting. "Run!" someone screamed. "They'll take you." Marco wanted to turn, to flee, but his feet felt rooted to the ground as he stared at the specter. The feeling of dread morphed into something far darker. "What do you want?" he managed, his voice trembling. The air vibrated with tension, the spirits shifting, their wails growing louder. "Join us," the figure hissed, dragging words like a wounded beast. "You're one of us now." He shook his head violently, fighting the heaviness in his chest. He needed to get away, his family could be nearby. The thought fueled him, igniting a flicker of defiance. Marco took a step back, a primal instinct telling him to escape. But the spirits surged forward, erupting into a chaotic dance of twisted regret and malice. "Help us," they cried, voices blending into a maddening clamor. "Help us find peace." Bile rose in his throat. They were trapped to fate worse than death. But what could he do? Why were they so desperate? With a swift motion, Marco tore his gaze from the figure, breaking free of their grasp. He sprinted down the empty street, the ground slick beneath his feet. Shadows flared at his sides, whispering threats, promises drawing him back into the abyss. He couldn't let them in. He barreled past ancient storefronts, their broken windows like soulless eyes watching him with curiosity. A sudden chill washed over him, as if the town was breathing in unison, exhaling dread. He pressed forward, desperation propelling him toward the nearest building, a crumbling church, its steeple jutting into the heavens like a crooked finger. The doors creaked eerily as he pushed them open, and he stumbled inside. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Flickering candles sputtered weakly, illuminating the dust that danced in the stagnant heat. "Help! Find us!" echoed through the cavernous space. Marco jumped, spinning around, searching for the source. He was not alone. The shadows coalesced, and what looked like a form glided toward him. Was this another spirit? Or something worse? "Your family. They're here." The voice slithered through the air, laced with temptation. A knot twisted in his stomach. What did they mean by here? His breath was shallow as he fought to steady himself. "No. Where are they? Tell me." The figure paused, tilting its head as if trying to gauge his intent. Was it trying to play with him or genuinely offering help? "Follow the whispers." It gestured, dissolving into the blackness surrounding him. Something cold brushed against the back of his neck, making him jump. The voices ramped up, pleading and urging him to listen. "Follow us. Find the truth." With his heart pounding like a war drum, Marco felt a surge of fear and curiosity, simultaneously pulling him in two directions. "I have to know," he gasped, stepping forward into the enveloping shadows. The moment he crossed the threshold, the world exploded. The walls of the church writhed, twisting into disfigured faces crying out in terror. Marco stumbled, swallowing back panic as the floor beneath him began to vibrate. It felt alive, a swirling mass of anguish reaching up for him. "Your family." The shadows howled ominously. "Will you find them, or will you be one of us?" A sudden realization hit him like a bolt. He might never leave this place. As panic seized him once more, a loud crash echoed from the back of the church, redirecting his focus. What if it was them? "Please, don't leave." The shadows screeched, and Marco's legs felt like lead. But hope surged again as he grasped the possibility of finding his family. He took a deep breath and, fueled by desperation, charged toward the sound, but an unexpected force dragged at his heels. The shadows didn't want him to go. Marco's heart raced. This was it. If he made it, he could find them and escape. But if he failed, another crash sounded louder this time, reverberating through his bones. Did he even want to know what was waiting for him in the dark? Collectively, the shadows shrieked, pulling him back. It was now or never. "What are you?" he shouted, gripping the edge of hope as he pressed forward once more, heart racing, breath coming in quick gasps. In the distance, something moved, something alive. Would he discover the truth or fall forever into the grips of Shadow's Hollow? The sound roared again, louder, and echoing off the ancient stone walls of the church. Marco pressed against the cold surface, heart pounding, dread clawing at his insides. Shadows writhed around him, desperate to ensnare him, pulling him back into the void from which he had fought to escape. "No!" he shouted, shaking his head as if to rid himself of their grips. "I have to find them." The whispering voices swirled around him like a storm, mocking and haunting. "They're lost just like us," they chanted, their words twisting in his mind. He could feel them seeping into him, weaving their despair into his own pulse. As he raced toward the source of the crash, remnants of broken pews crunched beneath his feet. Dark figures materialized at the edges of his vision, their faces gaunt, mouths twisted in silent screams. Their hollow eyes bore into him, pleading for release. Every step felt like being pulled deeper into their suffering. "If you don't leave," a voice hissed, "we'll never leave you." Breathless, Marco stumbled, regaining his footing in the decaying darkness. He pushed through the thick air, disregarding the way his skin prickled with unseen eyes. A realization struck him. It wasn't he just his family at stake. It was his very soul. Your soul, they howled in unison. Join us. Find eternal rest. Suddenly, he spotted a flicker of light ahead, cutting through the shadows. Hope surged, but the nagging dread clung to him like a shadow of its own. He pressed on, feeling the pull of his family guiding him. The crash sounded again, and he rounded a corner, heart in his throat. What he saw stopped him cold. A small altar laid fragmented on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of shattered glass. The flickering light emanated from candles positioned carefully around what seemed to be an object lying covered in a bloody shroud. His lungs seized at the sight, fear thickening in the air. "Marco!" A familiar voice cried out, a fragile thread of familiarity in the chaos. It was his sister, Sarah. "Help us!" He rushed to the altar, tearing the shroud aside, only to be met with a grotesque sight. The remnants of portraits lined the edge pictures of his family defaced, their eyes scratched out, mouths gaping open in silent screams. "Sarah!" he shouted, desperation painting his voice. "Where are you?" The shadows tightened around him, swirling, growing louder. "Join us, Marco!" they shrieked, "or lose them forever." The candles flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that danced in sync with the murmurs. Torn between the terror looming around him and the ghostly plea from his sister, Marco could feel his grip on reality loosening. "What do I do?" he cried, hands trembling. He felt the walls of the church constrict, like a snake ready to strike. "Find the truth," Sarah's voice echoed, even as it grew distant. "You have to choose." He stepped back, confusion swirling into dread. The figure of his sister morphed into that of a shadow, tendrils of darkness spiraling out and grasping toward him. He was losing her. "No!" he roared, his voice raw, fracturing through the chaos. The shadows writhed, and in that moment, he grasped the gravity of his choice. "Make your sacrifice," they whispered, an eerie sweetness lacing their tone. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. The church groaned, fragments raining down as the tension reached a fever pitch. Marco felt dizzy, terror crashing over him like waves. What had he done? Would he step back and save himself? Would sticking to the shadows claim everything he loved? With a final, visceral scream, he flung himself toward the altar, seeking some way to break the curse. But just as he drew near, the altar shattered, darkness swallowing him whole. And then everything went silent. The air grew thick, stagnant, as he suddenly found himself in an endless void with no light, no sounds, just a horrific emptiness. Had he truly lost them? He struggled against the weight, panic clawing at his chest. In the distance, the whispers morphed into echoes that circled around him, urging him deeper into darkness. "Find the truth," they murmured, each word dripping with malice. But what truth awaited him in the shadows? What horrors would he discover next? There was nothing, just an oppressive, swallowing darkness. Marco felt as if he were drowning in a void, limbs heavy with despair. Just as he managed to inhale, the echoes morphed into faint screams, each syllable chilling him to the bone. They bounced around him, taunting, chipping away at his sanity. Find the truth, his heart raced. Wasn't he already in hell? The darkness didn't care for his plight. It was indifferent, which was worse than terror. In the depths of that blackness, confusion twisted into clarity. This void was a prison forged from his deepest fears, but it also held a promise. The truth he sought was locked within. Breath hitching, Marco called out, "Sarah, Mom, Dad." The names fell from his lips in a whisper, echoing back to him, swallowed by shadows. Each name echoed like a ghost crying from far away. "Join us," the murmur returned, venomous and sweet, seeping into his thoughts like poison. Time lost meaning. Every second bled into the next. He felt the shadows shift, their fingers creeping through the damp air, threatening to congeal around him. "What truth?" he shouted into the darkness. "Tell me." The air thickened, as if the shadows paused to contemplate his question. And then an answer came, chilling and clear. "The truth of your sacrifice." A bone-deep shudder seized him. They spoke of sacrifice as if it was a currency, and fear gripped harder. He thought of his family, their faces flashing in his mind, goods consumed by darkness. What had he been willing to sacrifice? Did he even know? Just then, the void shimmered, a flicker of light punctuating the heavy blackness before him. It was faint, but there an inviting glow wavering like a candleless flame. He felt it pull at him warm and beckoning gentler than the shadows that ensnared him. He stumbled toward it, driven by some primal instinct that perhaps hope could be salvaged from despair. The light grew stronger, illuminating grotesque shapes that lurked in the periphery, their faces shrouded in shadow. He didn't care. He dropped to his knees, clawing through the tangible dark toward the benign glow. "Where are you?" he screamed, and that light blared urgently now. It flickered, as if it could sense his desperation. It poured into his soul, revealing glimmers of memories, his family laughing, holding hands, sharing holidays. He could almost feel their warmth surrounding him, lifting the weight of the void, whispering promises of hope. But behind him, the laughter twisted, morphing into anguished cries. "Marco!" they screamed, each voice splitting his heart like glass. "Leave us!" "No!" Tears stung his eyes as he closed his mind against their cries. He focused on the light, on the hope it brought instead of the loss that gripped his heart. As he moved, something in the shadows shifted, a haze gathering, pulling his attention back. A familiar figure emerged, framed in darkness, its eyes locked onto him. "You're bound to find the truth, Marco," it said, a voice he recognized all too well. It was Sarah transformed into a wraith-like form. "No, come back," he shouted, despair scraping at his throat. But she only shook her head, her features fleeting and distorted, flickering like an erratic bulb. "You have to leave or lose yourself." Every ounce of fear surged back into him, clenching tight. What was he losing? A sacrifice to join the lost? His heart raced, pounding with unresolved dread. Before he could process her words, the light flickered violently, waning as the shadows lunged. "Make your sacrifice," they hissed, a chorus that scrabbled against his ears. Would he leave her? Would he abandon those he loved to keep his soul intact? The truth lay just beyond his grasp. And then, in the depths of his torment, he caught sight of something glimmering amidst the shadows, something that might just hold the key to his escape. But was it worth the price he might pay? What if, in seeking the truth, he could lose everything he had ever wanted? The choice loomed ahead, darker and more sinister than anything he had ever faced. Marco hesitated, heart pounding. Would he dare venture closer? Or would he remain entrapped in this torment forever? The shadows coiled around Marco like a noose, tightening, suffocating. The glimmering object in the darkness seemed to pulse, urging him closer, yet a part of him wanted to recoil. Fear surged like a tidal wave, crashing against his will. What could it be? A key to freedom? Or a trap that would seal his fate? Inching forward, he felt the air grow colder, a bone-chilling draft slipping past his skin, making him shudder. Just a bit closer, he whispered to himself, battling against the overwhelming urge to flee. The light flickered in and out, teasing him with hope, but as the shadows churned, it seemed to twist into something malevolent. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted, trembling as if alive. Marco fell to his knees, hands digging into the damp earth. The glimmering figure was now within reach, a small, tarnished key, resting upon the packed dirt. He picked it up, metal cold and heavy in his palm. It glinted ominously, reflecting his fearful eyes. "Find the truth, unlock the door," the voices whispered, more insistent now, echoing from all directions. Panic enveloped him, heart hammering in his chest. Was this truth, this key, the means to save his family? Or would it only lead him deeper into darkness? The wraith of Sarah flickered again, the distortion of her face twisting like a macabre painting. "Marco, you must choose." Her voice echoed beyond the veil between worlds, a desperate plea. "You can't save us all." The shadows hissed in response, their voices layered, malevolent. "Leave her." Embrace your destiny. You know what has to be done. His breaths quickened, throat tightening. He couldn't abandon Sarah. Guilt suffocated him like the damp, stinky air. But if this key was to unlock a way out, to protect his family from whatever lurked beyond this torment, how could he resist? Make your sacrifice. The chorus pressed again. Only now their voices encompassed all his fears. They weren't just a whispering multitude, they were his memories, mingled with anguish and grief, his doubts clawing at him. Marco clutched the key tighter, feeling a tingle of energy surge through him. I won't leave you. He screamed into the void, willing the shadows to hear him. He had to be stronger. How could he move forward if every step tore at his heart? But as he stood, the shadows lunged again, wrapping around him with fierce intensity. The darkness began to swirl, blocking the light, dulling the memory of warmth. All around, voices crescendoed into chilling shrieks, drowning out his thoughts with overwhelming despair. The glimmer of the key offered little comfort now, seeming more like a cruel joke. What us down that door? He thought, holding it aloft like a torch shrouded in darkness. Would it reveal the truth he sought or trap him in a reality worse than the one he faced? He took a step backward, the choice breathing down his neck like a predator. Do I dare gauge the unknown? And just when he thought the ground would swallow him whole, a new figure emerged, a silhouette stepping from the shadows, wrapped in darkness yet closer to the light than anything else. Marco froze, heart skidding to a halt. Help me, Marco, it pleaded softly, its voice hauntingly familiar. His stomach dropped. Who was this? The shadows grumbled restlessly. Join us, they hissed, seductive and sinister, murmuring from all directions, thick with danger. As the figure stepped into the faint glow, he recognized it instantly. The longing in her eyes mirrored his own sorrow. Mom? The name slipped from his lips, trembling with disbelief. Help me find the truth, she whispered, fading in and out like an old television signal. Marco felt his pulse quicken, emotions crashing in waves. His choice spiraled back to the forefront of his mind: Sarah or his mother. Which path would lead him to salvation, and which to ruin? The key trembled in his grasp, revealing yet more startling realizations of loss. Would he dare unlock the door to his family's fate? He would have to decide, and soon, before the darkness consumed them all. The shadows seemed to pulse with impatience, a living thing yearning for his decision. Marco's hands shook as they gripped the key, the cold metal biting into his palm. Every heartbeat reverberated through him like an alarm. His mother's voice echoed, soft yet shattered, like glass on concrete. He couldn't let that voice fade again. Mom, what do I do? He shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. Unlock the truth, she responded, the words barely a whisper in the oppressive air. The darkness shifted, swirling like a storm waiting to unleash its fury. Around him, the air thickened, and the shadows began to close in. They whispered, a sinister symphony rising and falling like a tide of despair. Leave her to us. You can save your fate, Marco. Don't listen. His mother's voice surged through the chorus, fierce and defiant. You know what they are. Hollow husks of regret. Regret, that word echoed inside him. How many regrets had he collected? Each decision, each moment lost to shadows. Jason's birthday forgotten. Sarah's laughter drowned in silence. His mother's absence the deepest wound of all. Choose. The shadows roared, their shrieks melding into a cacophony of torment. Marco staggered, clutching his head, trying to block the wave of voices crashing down on him. Choose, Marco. Choose. With a desperate scream, a fractured memory surged to the forefront of his mind, a faded image of his mother and Sarah, laughing under the sun. The warmth washed over him, a fleeting illusion against the suffocating darkness that conspired to swallow them whole. Sarah, he murmured, letting the name hang in the air, heavy with meaning. A choice loomed clearer than ever. He could stand with his mother, chase the truth, but would it save Sarah? Or would the truth turn into a deeper betrayal, costing him everything he held dear? He stood on the precipice, two worlds stacked against one another. Unlock it. The shadows hissed, their voices oily and false. You will know freedom, Marco. You will be free. Close your eyes and feel. His mother urged, a beacon of light through the encroaching gloom. Only then will you stand undeterred. But the shadows writhed with fury. A sudden cold wind swept through the clearing. The air thinned, tightening around his chest. The key in his hand felt alive, pulsating with dark energy. Could it be the answer? Or was it a one-way ticket to despair? Without realizing, he was moving forward, backward, side to side, oscillating between moments of clarity and flashes of doubt. He cast frantic glances at the shadows, back to his mother. The glimmer of the key grew blinding, a path forcing him to make a choice. Decide. The voices screamed, rising to a fever pitch, drowning out everything. Unlock what must remain hidden. In a moment of sheer will, Marco faced the figure before him. If I unlock this door, will you truly help me? He demanded of his mother, heart thundering dangerously loud. Just as she moved to respond, the shadows lunged forward, their tendrils stretching, grasping for him like greedy hands. Your fate is sealed. The dark chorus bellowed, deafening his thoughts. Marco felt the fear ignite within him, a spark blazing against the cold void. In his veins coursed a desperate hope. He raised the key, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Make me understand. His voice wavered. A flicker of doubt crossed his mother's face before her voice steadied. You must choose, Marco. Tell me you choose. The darkness roared, and the key shimmered like lightning against the approaching storm. Everything waited on his decision, every life dangling by a thread. The ground shook beneath him, threatening to tear away all he loved, a harrowing silence expanding in the chaos. Would he dare unlock the door that may expose the truth, whatever it may cost? He hesitated, heartsick and terrified, as the weight of 1,000 forgotten moments threatened to drown him in despair. What lurked behind that door? What would it awaken? The shadows stretched closer, sirens of despair beckoning, while his heart raced with desperation. He had to act or be lost. Forever. Marco's resolve crumbled like dried leaves underfoot. Time twisted around him, every tick of the clock echoed like a scream. He inhaled sharply, the frosty air biting at his lungs. With the shadows closing in, the question burned in his mind. Could he trust what lay behind that door? Don't hesitate. Trust your heart. His mother's voice rang with urgency, but doubt gnawed at him. What if her truth was this darkness? The shadows shrieked their fury, pulling at his edges, taunting him with 1,000 what-ifs. He could hear them now, whispers flickering like candle flames, 1,000 regrets clawing for his attention. Leave her to us, Marco. It's easier, Eno. The scream burst from him, raw and primal. I will not abandon her. He tightened his grip on the key, and the metal burned with an otherworldly heat, pulsing as though alive. In that moment, he thought of Sarah, the subtle reminders of her laughter, the warmth of her spirit. Could he really stand by while shadows wove lies about her? His mother's solid form stood amidst the growing chaos, light radiating from her as she reached out. Do not let them twist your mind. You have the strength to face this. The shadows writhed, their voices lowering to conspiratorial whispers, pretending to coax him. Freedom awaits, Marco. Release us and we will unlock the world beyond. Share your fears, and we shall wipe them away. But the promise felt like a lie, thin as mist. Marco shoved fear down into the depths of his stomach. What world lies there? He shouted through clenched teeth. Not what, but who? The shadows chanted back, their tone chilling as frost. The one you seek, Sarah. Such suffering does not have to be a burden. They hissed and swirled, figures coalescing in the dark, faces flickering in frames of anguish. Then a soft light broke through, illuminating a familiar figure, the silhouette of Sarah, glimmering like a beacon yet shadowed by doubt. Marco's heart skipped, tender hope clashing with fear. Sarah? Choose, Marco, her voice echoed, sweet yet warped. Unlock the door, and I will be yours forever. His pulse thundered in his ears, a drum warning him of the danger ahead. But at what cost? His gaze shifted to his mom, her face hardened with concern. What if I unleash something I can't control? Listen, Marco's mother pleaded, urgency in every syllable. Sarah is here, but so is the darkness. You control the key. If you don't act, they'll take her from you. The shadows shifted, the pressure building. You waste time, Marco. You can call her. All you need to do is turn it. Join us. Marco's eyes darted from his mother to the flickering light of Sarah. Battle raging within him, rescue or ruin. The shadows swirled closer, curling around his legs, their cold touch snatching at his resolve. As he steadied his breathing, the key shone with renewed intensity, an emerald glow pulsating, begging him. What if the truth is worse than I imagined? He murmured, feeling the chill of their deceit. Unlock it, his mother urged. Everything depends on this moment. He raised the key above the darkness, trembling, absorbing the weight of his unmade choice. In that instant, doubt collided with longing, and the painful truth of the shadows pulled him down. Could the truth be worse than the lies? He had to know. Marco pressed the key into the lock, staring into the shadows that threatened to consume him. For a split second, silence cloaked the cacophony, a stillness swirling around him where time halted. He twisted the key. The air crackled like lightning. The earth beneath trembled as an otherworldly light erupted, pushing the darkness back. In that blinding flash, a terrible cacophony erupted, a scream that was both human and inhuman. The shadows shrieked in anger as the light split them apart. But as the door cracked open, a shadow lunged forward, a dark, twisted figure, its eyes burning like embers of hellfire. What have you done? It snarled, an echo of Marco's own regrets surfacing, desires clawing to escape. Marco stumbled back, terror seeping into his bones. As everything unraveled around him, racing, pulse and shallow breaths filled the air. What had he unleashed into the world? He had thought he could grasp the truth, but that truth could be a far darker shadow than he anticipated, and in the growing silence, another choice loomed, one that would shape his fate forever. Could he face the figure he had unwittingly released, or would it drag everyone down with it? The twisted figure paused, its gaze locking onto Marco. The eyes blazed with a hatred that cut deeper than any blade. A rush of icy dread gripped him, unyielding as iron chains. It was a reflection of all his hidden fears and failures, a darkness personified. What have you released? It hissed again, a voice like thunder mixed with whispers. Each word rattled through him, sending shakes racing up his spine. As the warmth of the ethereal light dissipated, darkness clawed back, night creeping around him, hungry for the light. Marco stumbled backward, fighting to catch his breath, his heart pounding like an erratic drum. Marco! His mother's voice rang out, urgency slicing through the fear. She took a step forward as shadows curled hungrily at her feet. Get away from it. Close the door. But the door had swung open wider, drawing in a cold breath that stung the air, stealing it from his lungs. Marco glanced at the glowing threshold. Sarah's silhouette flickered like a distant star, but her outline was dimming, overshadowed by the consuming presence of the figure before him. Why fight it? The shadow mocked, taking a step closer, the shadows undulating around it. You sought the truth, didn't you? You desired to be free of pain. I can grant that. The offer hung there, thick and poisonous. Could it really ease the burden he carried? His mind whirled, visions of Sarah intertwined with the darkness threatening to swallow her whole. What do you know of pain? Marco spat, defiance igniting within him, though doubt festered in his chest. More than you can fathom. The shadow grinned, an abomination made of despair. You can succumb, let it all go. Just give in. It gestured toward Sarah, whose light waned as fear seized her features. You have the power. Release her from this life. Both of you know. Marco shouted, the word tearing from his throat, fighting back against the seductive call. I'm not giving up on her. I want her to live. His mother surged forward, her figure bright and unwavering amidst the chaos. Marco, listen. You must remember why you're fighting. The real Sarah is in there. The dark figure hesitated, the flames in its eyes flickering. What makes her real? This flesh? You're losing your grip, Marco. Embrace the void. There is so much peace. The shadows writhed, lashing out at him, reaching for his heart with icy fingers. Panic sank its talons deeper into his throat. He was losing control, the darkness whispering sweeter than any lie. Marco. Sarah's voice cut through, desperate. You have to close the door. Don't listen to it. Felt like a race against time. The figure surged closer, stretching out a clawed hand, teeth bared in a predatory smile. If Marco failed to act, it would consume everything he cherished. What will it be? The figure taunted, its words slithering past Marco's defenses. A life of endless suffering or release. Join us, he faltered, visions of the nightmares pulling him in, ghosts of his past surfacing, the missed chances, the failures. But through the fog of despair, a flicker remained, a stubborn ember of hope. He could not let this nightmare take Sarah, he could not let it win. Marco grasped the key tighter, heart racing. He turned back toward the door, its gleaming edge flashing a hopeful glow. The shadows swirled tighter, threatening to drag him down. But he was done with fear. With a roar of determination, he leaped toward the door, willing every ounce of strength into that action. As darkness lunged for him, desperate to reclaim what it feared to lose, he slammed the door shut. But the echo of that decision reverberated through the air, and a chilling laugh rattled from the figure behind him, tainted with victory. Foolish boy, you cannot escape your choices, they will haunt you. The darkness cackled as the key fell silent, the repercussions of his choice gripping him tighter. What lay ahead was uncertain, and with every ounce of strength he fought with, shadows lingered coiling at the door, watching, waiting. Had he defeated the darkness? Or only postponed the inevitable? With his breath hanging in the air, a new dread emerged on the horizon. Somewhere in the pulsating shadows, a deeper threat lingered, one that sought to reclaim what was lost. What would emerge next? Lurking just beyond the door he thought he had closed. The shadows howled, shifting and writhing in response to Marco's decisive choice. Even as he slammed the door shut, he could feel their fingers lingering, brushing against his mind, clawing at his resolve, refusing to release him. The laughter of the dark figure echoed mournfully, a reminder that the battle was far from over. Marco felt the ground tremble beneath him, ripping at the threads of certainty he had just woven. What now? He murmured to himself, eyes darting from the distorted figures flickering in the corners of his vision to the fading glow of Sarah. Everything became a blur as shadows coalesced around him, a suffocating blanket of despair that threatened to pull him back into that deep, dark void. But then he remembered he wasn't alone. Mom! Sarah! He shouted, his voice cutting through the chilling air. We can't let them win. He looked around, heart racing. The church's walls felt alive, the very stones vibrating with memories of lost souls. They were not merely trapped. They were a part of his story now. Suddenly, the shadows convulsed as if recoiling from his defiance. The chilling laughter faded, replaced by agonizing wails, shifting from rage to pleading. Help us, they cried, voices warping into the echoes of familiar faces. They were crying out to him, weaving memories of his childhood, regrets weaving around him, moments he had shut away. The birthday parties, the laughter shared over dinner, sleepless nights spent worrying. Release us, they gasped, or be lost like us. Tears pricked his eyes as he remembered the faces of those he loved, his sister, his parents, the warmth of his family. Standing rooted to the ground, he felt hope rise, pooling in his chest. No, I refuse to join your endless torment. With each step forward, light flickered in the air, a manifestation of his determination. His body pulsed with resolve. He couldn't abandon his family, not after everything they endured together. He would find a way to beat the darkness. The shadows recoiled at his defiance, swirling like a tempest. You cannot stop what has already been chosen, they roared, their voices dripping with menace. I can try, he shouted back defiantly, A sudden explosion of light filled the space, washing over the eerie figures as Marco's heart surged. In that moment of clarity, he understood the key he had grasped was not just a tool. It was a symbol of his strength, his bond with those he loved. He raised it high above his head. "This is my truth." The shadows screeched, resisting his light. Marco felt empowered, his memories of joy swirling around him, brightening the darkness. "Every moment matters. You can't take that from me." The altar surged forth light, illuminating the church, chasing away the shadows. The figures around him transformed, fleeting impressions of those lost souls creating clarity over despair. Marco could see them, his mother, his sister, even others he never met. "Help us," they urged again, but the plea felt different now, reaching out for salvation rather than despair. He realized that they, too, were fighting their chains. Together, Marco bellowed, determination swelling within him. "We will fight against the darkness. You're not alone." In a moment, he snapped the key into the lock that trembled amid the chaos. The shadows surged, clawing at him desperately, but Marco would not flinch. "You want to trap us? You want to win." As he twisted the lock, it pushed back a wave of energy flooding the room. Light cascaded like a waterfall, bathing the dark figures, encasing them in radiant warmth. He felt the presence of his family, strong and bright against the oppressive night. "Mom, Sarah, come on," he cried out, the warmth enveloping them all, pouring through the fragments of the altar. Time lost meaning, moments colliding as the threshold in the church exploded. The shadows, once invading, seemed to darken and draw back, desperately trying to shield themselves from the light. "No!" they screamed, scrambling against the incinerating brilliance. With a surge of purpose, Marco leaped forward, arms outstretched, feeling the connection with his family igniting. They joined hands, forming a barrier of love and warmth against the encroaching shadows. In that instant, Marco knew the power of love surpassed fear. As they pushed forward in unity, the shadows began to dissolve into the fabric of forgotten memory. He could hear the cries of lost souls softly fading, turning into something different, releasing them into the night air. Marco's heart swelled with emotion. Each soul freed was like a stitch going through the endless fabric of hope. Together, bathed in light, they shouted, "We choose each other." And just like that, the shadows shattered, bursting apart like glass, leaving a sparkling dust floating softly around the room. Silence fell, deep and welcoming. Marco could hear his breath, a clear sign of existence no longer encumbered by that darkness. He tightened his grip on Sarah's hand and his mother's, warmth flooding him as the remnants of despair faded away. The air shifted, brightening with possibility, as he blinked against the ethereal glow illuminating the church. "Are we free?" he whispered. "Yes," his mother replied with love wrapping around them like a safe embrace. They were finally escaping the chains of regret that had held them bound. With a final glance at the whispering shadows now turning to light, Marco stepped forward, embracing the warmth ahead with his family at his side. "Let us go home." Together, they walked into the burgeoning light, leaving shadows hollow behind, forever marked by courage and love, a testament to what it truly meant to fight against the darkness. If you've enjoyed this spine-tingling journey, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the dark tales that await. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. And remember, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion.